Welcome to this episode of our Classy podcast. I'm your host, Mary Sturgill, the Innovation and Entrepreneur Faculty Fellow at Furman University. We want to thank you for joining us today. This podcast is brought to you through a partnership between the Furman Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center and the Communication Studies Department at Furman University. I am so excited today because we are talking to 2011 Furman alum, Amanda Quinton. Amanda is the founder and president of Quinton Digital, a boutique marketing talent development agency based in Nashville, Tennessee. And as you might have guessed, based on where she is from, she focuses on helping artists create their brand and develop their careers. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Murray. I appreciate it.
I want to get started because you have such an interesting story. But before we jump into your company and what you do for rising country music artists, tell us about how you came to be where you are once you graduated from Furman. Give us a brief history of that.
Absolutely. So I interned in Nashville the summer after my junior year, and it was with an indie blog called Music City Unsigned. I'm not even sure if they're around anymore, but I loved Nashville as an intern, and I knew I wanted to get back. I connected with a Furman alum in hopes of landing a job through him. His name is Greg Hill. I'll go ahead and call him out. We're friends. He's an artist manager in Nashville, and he's a great artist manager. But I met with him and asked him for an internship, and he said, nope, you're going to figure it out. I have full faith that you can. So I moved to Nashville with a job at Red Robin. I worked at the Red Robin in Greenville while I was in college, and they transferred me out to Nashville, and I found an internship on Craigslist. So that was how I got my foot in the door. That internship turned into a job that paid me a whopping $15,000 salary.
Wow.
And I continued waiting tables for a long time. Ended up actually, though, sometimes waiting tables is a really great job to do. It teaches you communication skills. It teaches you how to deal with problems. It teaches you how to deal with stress. And you meet a new person every 5 minutes. Well, one night at Red Robin, one of my tables was a mom with a couple kids. And she just asked me, what do you do other than waiting tables? I can tell. And I said, well, I'm working for this songwriting competition. It's my first job. I'm trying to get in the music industry. And she said, well, I have a little marketing company and I'm hiring for someone in my marketing department. Would you come interview with me on Monday? And I said yes, and I went Monday morning and I got the job. And that job gave me the first opportunity to work with recording artists. I got to work with Kenny Rogers. I got to work with Sam Bush, who is a pioneer in the bluegrass world. And I got to work with Eric Paslay, who is an amazing country songwriter, and got to be part of his first #1 Friday night. So that was the job that kind of opened me into the music business. And at that time, there wasn't really a job in social media. So it kind of turned.
What year was this?
Let's see. This was probably 2013, 2012.
Right. So
social media. Yeah. Instagram started in 2011.
Yeah.
So as an intern, I was figuring it out with all of the other young people who were figuring it out. And bosses at that time were leaning on the interns and the young people, as we still are, to teach us how to use new platforms that younger people are using. So social media kind of became a job while I was in the role. My title shifted a couple times. It started as a community developer, a community strategist, something of that nature, and was more focused initially on fan clubs and email lists and, groups and newsletters and message boards. And then that started transitioning out into Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, more YouTube, which was already a huge part of the puzzle, Snapchat from there. So that job, Eric Paslay's team ultimately recommended me to work for this company named Marbaloo. And Marbaloo Marketing is one of the top 3 marketing firms in Nashville. They work with a lot of A-list artists. And when I started working with that company, I was one of the first, I think, 5 or 6 people. In the year that I worked for Marbaloo, we went from 5 to 20. We blew up. We started working with really big acts. My first day, I was giving Kelsey Ballerini as a client, and she had 3,000 fans at the time. So you can kind of see in that year what happened to Kelsey's career is kind of what also happened to the company. So that, I'm sorry, it's a little bit of a long story, but had to go through all of those steps and work for what I thought was the dream job, but it got a little too big too fast. I ended up burning out really hard. I was still waiting tables. One thing about working in a passion-based industry is that you are more willing to take a pay cut because you love your job so much, right?
Right.
I mean, assistants who work at agencies for touring, they take jobs for $20,000 because they get free backstage passes to Bonnaroo, like
Right.
the perks and the things that you love about working in the entertainment industry oftentimes means that you're doing it for less because you love it and, because there's a line out the door for people
Right.
to take your job.
But
So
those other jobs really prepared you for what you're doing now. What did you learn from them that you're taking into
mm,
your business now?
I think it's really important to work for other people, especially if you're an entrepreneur. You are going to learn so much about being a boss from the bosses that you work for. I think that is a huge piece of it. And I think the relationship building and earning trust within the industry is so important. When I moved to town, nobody knew who I was.
Right.
Now I can walk into any bar or restaurant in Nashville and see somebody that I know. And that, having influence, I think the word influence right now is an interesting thing to talk about because everyone wants to be an influencer. But to have true influence, you have to have relationships of people that trust your opinion. And that gets built over time. So if I had walked right into Nashville and said, I'm going to start my own company, it would have been a lot harder and it
Right.
would have taken a lot longer. I feel like I got a jump start in the relationship game because the bosses that I worked for introduced me to these teams. They are the ones who said, we believe in you working for us enough to put you on an email with some very important, influential people. So I definitely got the time to prove myself. And when I burned out, I took about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, just waited tables,
Mhm.
reset my brain a little bit, thought about what I wanted to do. And I think it wasn't what I realized, it wasn't so much that I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. I just wanted to do it differently. I
Right.
wanted to do it with a different set of expectations on myself, on my time, how I valued my time, and what motivated me. I think money motivates, but money does not fulfill. And a lot of times in entertainment based industry, you are chasing this big giant thing all the time. And the
Mhm.
most fulfilling parts for me about the music industry are working with that artist who is starting to connect. Is that space in the developing game where the fans really jump on board and there starts to be this feeling beyond what you can simply measure, that this is resonating. So that, to me, is the most special part about marketing and developing artists. And I kind of had to take a step back from the big corporate job and the A-list artists and the giant roster, to kind of realize that. And I started freelancing in 2016. So I quit my job fall 2015,
Mhm.
and within 6 months, I had a full freelance plate and was able to quit waiting tables for the first time in 8 years.
Yeah.
So it took me 6 months to get out of 8 years of waiting tables. Once I put my head down and started doing some consulting, started taking on some freelance social media clients, and being choosy about the accounts that I wanted to work,
Right.
and the ones that felt like the right fit. That
Right.
over time, that freelance business just built upon itself. I already had great relationships, and then I was doing good work. So in 2018, I hired my first part timer, kind of put a stamp on establishing the company. And on Monday, my fifth employee starts. I just hired her. So it's been great. It's been an awesome couple years of steady growth. Also, note 2018 January, I hired my first part-timer as an independent contractor.
Yeah.
It's been, all of 2018, 2019, 2020. We've taken 3 years to grow to 6 people.
Right.
So
And that was
that
one
is
of,
something that happened slowly.
yeah, I was going to say that was one of the things that you saw in the other company that you were working in, and how fast they grew and how they just couldn't handle the growth that fast. And in our conversation, you said something to me that I found super interesting, was that your passion is breaking an artist without breaking the artist. Can you explain
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, absolutely. To use a real world example right now, look at what's happening with Morgan Wallen. Now, I am not best friends with Morgan Wallen. I don't know him inside out, backwards, forwards, but look at how quickly he went from, having this song called Up Down with Hardy that you probably have never heard of, to being the biggest name in the game, SNL, morning shows, late shows, top of the charts, setting records.
Winning
And
awards. Yeah.
mentally, yeah, new artist of the year. Mentally, he's not okay. So the example that I love to use when I'm talking to artists is Bia Brandy Carlisle. Brandy Carlisle has been around for 20 years. She
Hmm.
started in Seattle in a rock band, and slowly but surely, because she is such a light, she has a positive energy, she is motivated, she's never had any bad publicity. I mean, she just stays motivated to grow.
Right.
I always say our goal is to make progress at a pace that is realistic based on where we're at and where we're going. And realistic meaning taking care of everyone on the team and everyone involved. This is not product marketing. This is people marketing. This is a person. It's a human being. They have feelings. They go through phases. We all have our ups and downs. I mean, no one's career is just a straight line.
Right.
So, you have to really be in it for the long haul. And I think that's something that's special about Nashville to me, is that Nashville historically has built artists that last, instead of just artists that are hot.
Right.
You have big songs, the big pop songs, the big artists that are top of the charts. Sometimes those careers last 3 to 5 years max. You look at a country artist or a really notable singer songwriter, a lot of which come from at least the Nashville mindset, whether or not geographically in Nashville.
Right.
Um, you can go see Alan Jackson fill a stadium today and sound as great and be as positive and as motivated as he was 25 years ago.
Right.
And that to me is the goal.
Yeah. So in your company and what you do for these artists, how do you maintain that? Because you're really, for people who don't know what Quinton Digital does, kind of explain to us what you do for these artists.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of digital marketing going on right now.
Absolutely.
And I think that historically, artist managers have not been prepared to be so involved in digital. Right now, the fan base is being developed online. 10 years ago, you would go out on the road and you would build your fans and build your audience and test your songs.
Right.
Luke Combs spent years touring the Ohio Valley and kind of the Midwest and building a really deep rooted group of people who really cared about him and were invested in him before he started jumping into the public at such an accelerated pace. So he had all that groundwork laid. Now you have to lay that groundwork online, especially in the challenges that we've had over the last year without touring.
Right.
You can get 20,000 fans in a weekend on TikTok. That's nuts. There is opportunity for audience development, but you want to get 20,000 fans that care about your music, not that care about this dance that you did on TikTok. So, it's caring about it. It's artist development with a digital focus is kind of what we say that we do. Yes, we manage social media accounts. Yes, we do graphic design and content creation. We help with live streams. We help with tour marketing. We help with, brand promotions, contesting, whatever you see online that is through an artist owned presence. So their Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, website,
Right.
email, YouTube. Those are all of the places that we are involved. But it's doing that with a purpose. I always say we post with a purpose. We're not trying to just add to the clutter and add to the fluff. And I think that's how we stay motivated to do it differently, is because we're in it for the long haul, and we're what are we trying to do here?
Right.
With great power comes great responsibility. If you
Right.
have a lot of fans, what are you doing with it? So I think it's been interesting to navigate that during the past year with TikTok blowing up the way that it has, and now with community and whatever the next thing of the day might be.
Yeah. And there is a strategy to what you do, because
Absolutely.
there's a fine line between oversaturation and not getting enough.
Yeah, I think it's funny, the word strategy. Every time I've taken the Clifton Strengths Finder, strategy has been my number one.
Right.
But I think that strategy is perfected, or at least refined through experience.
Right. For sure.
I love strategy and I love big picture, but I've done it the wrong way plenty of times, right? And I've learned more. I mean, we had an artist recently, we had this whole idea for this whole TikTok way we're going to leak a song and get people to do it, and it flopped. It didn't resonate, you know? And that's okay. We learned so much through it, and we're totally going to use that knowledge and how we come up with a new strategy. But, you know, I do think that you have to go through it and try new things. And that I think is the exciting part of working in a space that is evolving so quickly. You know, you can chase it and
Right.
you can run up the tech train and say, I'm going to go chase this app and I'm going to, you know, 100% invest in TikTok. Or you can take a step back and say, okay, how long is TikTok going to be around? What's the average lifespan of a social media platform? Why is it different? What psychologically is the reason why it's different? Why are people flocking here?
Right.
And how do we think about that? You know, so that's where I like to take the strategy, is just really going a step back every single time to figure out the why and make sure that when we're investing our time in something that it's creating value as a result.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, to figure out the why and figure out, okay, why are we on this platform and not this platform? Where is
Mm-hmm.
our audience? That kind of thing, for sure. You mentioned that you had some failures, and I'm sure you've had some failures along the way. Would you share some of those and how you overcame those with our listeners? Because I think you're right. We learn from our failures. That's where we do the
Mm-hmm.
most growth.
Yeah, I will say when I burned out, I really felt like a failure, right?
Hmm.
All the boxes were checked. I had the job, I had the office in the cool building, you know, I got to work with cool clients, I got to go to cool parties. And I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in passion-based industries, you know,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
I really had to go through all of that to realize that a small business is fulfilling, you know, and finding the small win that is fulfilling rather than chasing this big thing that I probably wasn't ever going to get to. I am happier every single day of my life now because I went through that low point. And I did have to hit my rock bottom. I hope that other people don't necessarily have to do that, but honestly, the strongest people that I know have all gone through a rock bottom,
Right.
right?
True.
Everyone has their worst day. You can try
Right.
comparing them all day long, but everybody
Right.
has their worst day, everybody has their best day.
Yeah.
And I think I've had a lot of small failures, but I also think that when I fail, I try to make it as low risk as possible. All
Hmm.
right, if you go through a TikTok and it doesn't blow up, that's not a failure. You know, you can delete the post. You know,
Right.
you can get, if the worst thing that can happen is that nobody's going to see it, that's not a failure. So I think that we try to treat social media as not a stressful thing, as not a source for failure, and just try to make progress. Most of our clients stay with us for the long haul for an extended period of time rather than just jumping on for a single release or an album release because we are motivated for consistent growth. You know, every month, how are we worth it? Every month, how are we doing something that is developing your audience, that is super serving your fan base, that is helping spread the gospel of who you are as an artist and why people should care.
Hmm.
Um, that is it. So I think that learning that it's simple at the end of the day, I had to go through kind of all the complicated pieces, and doing the most is not necessarily always going to be the most valuable use of your time.
Right. Amanda, let's talk about how COVID has affected not only your company, but the music industry and what pivots people had to take, because you're right there in the middle of it. And so I think you're the expert here. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The music industry obviously took a really hard hit, especially in the live event space. Venues are struggling, touring agencies are struggling, artists, managers are struggling. Anybody that depends on that live touring income, which is the majority of the income that most artists are running their businesses by. So we have had to pivot and reevaluate that pie chart of how much are we depending on touring and what other pieces of that pie can we lean into to make up for it. I think that live streaming has been a little bit of a band-aid and obviously is an area that we had to be involved in the pivot on a day-to-day basis, right? It started with All our clients are calling us. We want to do a weekly Instagram live. We want to do Instagram live with a guest. We want to do a Facebook live that's cross posted on multiple pages. We want to do a pre-recorded live. We want to do a ticketed live. Like, it just built on top of each other of, where we started back in March to where we got kind of by the end of the year. There were live festivals and all of that. But, think about the fact that everyone who's a professional right now probably has Zoom fatigue. Do you really want to get off work and watch a live stream on your computer? So then the tech pieces of that is, how do we make sure you can watch that live stream on your TV? How can we make sure you can project it up on a screen in your backyard? How can we make more of an experience out of it? You saw a lot of people doing drive-in concerts. I think there were a lot of pivots, but none of those pivots replaced touring. And I think that's where we're looking at now, is how does that come back safely, right? Can we have a vaccination check before people get in the doors? Whatever it might be necessary. It's been a process of rethinking how we value a fan and what is the average value of a fan, and how, as a fan, are you contributing financially to supporting your favorite artists. Merch matters. Buy t-shirts. If you have a CD player in your car, still get a CD. I think if you think about the concept of a CD before streaming, I could buy a Backstreet Boys CD and listen to it an infinite number of times for $11.99. Okay.
Right.
If you listen to your favorite artist an infinite number of times, you probably still won't generate $11.99 in streaming revenue for them. So you have to figure out, other than just listening on Spotify or Apple Music or Alexa or Pandora or whatever your platform of choice, how are you going to make sure that artists can still make music? It is expensive to record music. Yes, Billie Eilish can make an incredible album in her bedroom for a very low budget, but some of them do cost more to have real players, and the value that we put behind this is significant. So I think it has made us rethink that, and I hope that over this next chapter of times that fans will start to rethink how they can better support. Are you going to pay $5 a month to be in some kind of fan club for your favorite band, right? Not for your top 20, but who is your favorite artist and why, and how long do you want them to keep doing this? I think that is an important question, and I think the responsibility is kind of going back on the fan in this case. Some of the acts that we work for had to lay off a significant number of people. We had to ultimately cut back our retainers and do more work. We had to do more for less, because digital was the answer, but the budgets weren't there to have digital, which is a luxury team. Not every artist has a third-party digital team on board. So how do we still create value in significant ways that are helping drive merch sales and increase streaming numbers? So it's been a puzzle for sure, but I think hopefully over the next year we're going to start to see it get better for everybody.
Yeah, I think we are, as things begin to open. But you said something that I picked up on, and that is, you worked with certain artists to cut your fee for them.
Mm-hmm.
And not many companies would do that, or probably have done that. Talk about the philosophy behind that a little bit.
Well, I think I had faith that it wasn't going to be forever. I am an optimistic person by nature. Maybe I wasn't that way. You can ask my best friend if I was optimistic 10 years ago, and she would say no. But, I just, in order to be a leader, in order to be a motivator, I have to have faith that the job's still going to be there when I wake up in the morning. And if I come to the table with that attitude, it shows up. I mean, we had a client come off a couple months ago, and I didn't have one to replace it. And I was just like, something's going to show up. Sure enough, something showed up. Like it always does. So if I'm going to cut back on a retainer, it's going to allow us to take on maybe some more consulting work or something else. We have to fill in that gap financially, of course. And that I have to figure out as an owner in a business development role. But is taking that cutback for 6 months going to prove that I care about that client enough for them to want to keep me on that project for the rest of the career of that artist? In some cases, yes. I think that people really do value your time. And I was very clear about the investment of time that happened, right? So, hey guys, just so you know, we went above and beyond on this. You have to be clear. You have to make sure that um, you are communicating where your time is being invested and how valuable those hours are. You know, if we end up putting 30 hours into a project that realistically is only really paying us for 15, I want that client to know, hey, you know, this month we did a lot of extra stuff and it's because we care. It's because we want to be here for the long run. But, you know, next month, if there's less to do, cut us some slack. You know, so I think it's just communicating and finding that balance. And if there's mutual respect, then normally it goes over pretty well.
Yeah, and I think caring about your clients and your employees as well. I think you said you nailed that right on the head there. How did because you were a double major, music and business, right? How
Mhm.
did that prepare you for what you're doing right now?
I spun a lot of plates in college. I didn't know a lot of other students who worked a full-time job in addition to going to classes and
Right.
majoring. Also, as a music major, you're taking a bunch of 2 credit and 1 credit classes as well that act like 4 credit classes. So, you know, I would be taking 18 to 22 credit hours given the semester.
Hmm.
I was also in 5 musical ensembles. I had to be in marching band to keep my scholarship. I was in jazz, orchestra, wind ensemble, whatever, the maximum number I could be in, and was working 2 weeknights and all weekend, waiting tables and bartending, and somehow still getting good enough grades to be allowed to double major, and somehow still partying and having a blast. I mean, I really did enjoy college. I made great friends, but I did a lot, and I think that I was at Furman during the time that the recession hit in 2008,
Hmm.
and my parents couldn't pay for my college after that. So I rose up. I was going to be independent and take that load upon myself and take out loans and work my way through college. And that honestly is what prepared me to do what I did. I
Right.
think a lot of people graduate college and they want to go get this cool job and think that they're going to make $45,000 with benefits. And, you know, I knew that that wasn't going to be the case going into it. I knew that it was going to be hard. And I definitely think Furman prepared me for that. I think you forget a lot of the nuts and bolts of things that you learn in college over time. But Furman absolutely taught me how to think and the critical thinking emphasis and the expectation of excellence. You know, I think those things really did prepare me to hold myself accountable in the real world.
Yeah. So Digital has grown. You're not just the social media arm for your clients, but you just started a new arm of digital media. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I actually started a whole second company. Another, I guess I should have told this story about failing, but a lot of times, like when artists ask you to do something and you love working with them, you just say yes, you know, to whatever they want you to do. And I had a number of artists ask me to be their manager, and it happened 3 times. So by the time it happened on the third one, I was like, okay, maybe there's something here. These artists keep asking me to manage them. So I managed them. And going through that, I mean, being a manager of an entertainment, I don't know how to generalize it, but an artist or an actor or something is very general. You know, you basically are the artist's right-hand person to help them figure out everything they need to do. I don't know how to do everything in the music business. I know how to do marketing and digital. So, my experience didn't prepare me to go tackle publishing and to go tackle touring and to go tackle some of these areas that I didn't have the experience in. So I learned through that that I was better suited to start a label and set up that label structure so that my value and the back end and the deal structure is based on what I bring to the table from a marketing strategy, you know, advertising, digital publicity perspective, the things
Right.
that are online, the things that I know. So it is a new model of a label. It is definitely non-traditional. It's very artist friendly, and I went through a lot of conversations and a lot of meetings before I chose the partners that I was going to do it with and the way that we were going to set it up. And it took 6 to 8 months just to build out the structure for it.
Hmm.
But it's been a fun project. I think I've always wanted to continue growing and continue stretching myself. I live in uncomfort and I am okay with it. So I think that I had felt like I had kind of maxed out. I have this digital company. It's going great, and I have hired the best people. I hope they stay with me and I just try to keep them as happy as I can so that they do. I take really good care of my girls to the best of my ability because I've hired great people and let them run, and they are running it. They are doing a great job, right? They are growing. And I think a lot of times as a boss, you can be a control freak and micromanage and want to make sure everything's happening, but
Right.
you have to let them mess up. You have to let them figure out the hard problems. I can't just do it for them, nor do I have the capacity to do all of the things that they're doing. So I think it's been a great lesson learning to let it go a little bit,
Hmm.
and that has freed up my brain to do what it wants to do in coming up with this new adventure. So I'm now investing my time there this year. I don't know how it's going to do. I'm not really gonna know until about October. I won't be able to really gauge the progress. It's the music industry is it happens very slowly and then all of a sudden, and things, sales take a while to come in from Spotify and Apple and all those places, and to
Right.
figure out all the data, it's complicated. But I'm excited for the puzzle.
Yeah.
So yes, now I have two companies instead of one, but TBD on, I guess, like the trajectory of company two, but stay tuned.
Right. We certainly will stay tuned. You
It is called
mentioned
it is called Q Records, by the way, but
Q Records. All right, good. I want
Q
everybody
Q
to know
U
that.
E U E, like next in Q.
Oh yeah, I like that. Very, very clever. You mentioned your girls. Is this an all-female company?
It is, and I didn't intend for it to be that way. It's
Right.
just kind of how it happened. My business manager is a guy. His name's Daniel, and he is fantastic.
Yeah.
So he's amazing and definitely is part of our team, and I talk to him daily. But
He's the
yeah,
sole
I
male.
think he is the sole male right now, and I did interview a guy for our latest position, but that's just kind of how it settled. Two of my employees went remote last year
Hmm.
and are now back kind of in their hometowns, and that has been a stretch, but a great thing for us to figure out. It has helped our communication, because we have to talk more online in writing, uh, and really be held accountable for things when you have remote employees versus just being in the office and having conversations and talking things through.
Right.
It does force us to document better. So that has been great. But yeah, we are all girls, and they are all fantastic.
Let's talk about, because I'm sure our listeners are curious, who are some of the artists that you're working with or that you have worked with?
Yeah, absolutely. Our biggest clients right now are Zach Brown Band and Tim McGraw. We then have kind of the next tier of artists on the rise. We have Matt Stell, who's had a few number ones. We have Ray Lynn, who has
Oh
actually
yeah.
been around for quite a minute and is about to put out an album we're really excited to be a part of. Chris Bandy and Drew Green, Robert Counts. We work a few artists on the Sony roster, Rachel Womack. There's a pop artist in LA named Daphne Willis who used to be in Nashville that we're working with. Yeah, honestly, we're blessed on the digital side. Most of those artists have been with us for a while, which
Mhm.
we really love. We're working with Clay Walker, who I've been a big fan of like my entire life.
Right.
And then, we have a couple brands. We have Miranda Lambert's nonprofit. It's called Mutt Nation, and we get to just work with dogs. So that's awesome. And
Yeah.
then on the label side, there's our flagship act is called Texas Hill. They're a male vocal trio. And then we have this guy named Nate Frederick, singer-songwriter, and another singer-songwriter named Lindsay Ellen, and more to come for sure.
Yeah.
But QuintonDigital.com has the roster listed at all times. So if
Yeah.
it's changing by the time this podcast comes out, you can definitely check it out there.
Right, for sure. Before I let you go, because we could talk all day. I mean, I find this so interesting, and I'm sure our listeners do too. I want you to give a piece of advice to, especially since you're so careful about your growth and how you grow, and so maybe it's on that, maybe it's not, but give a piece of advice to entrepreneurs who are thinking about, or even students who are thinking about what they need to do with the next step of their life or the next step of their company or with their idea that they have.
Yeah, I think, everything that you learn in business classes is true, right? SWOT analysis of yourself, for sure. Look at the supply and demand. I think one thing with artists, they can come to me with a great song and be like, I know this is going to work. It's going to be great. It's going to blow me up. But nobody's heard it. They don't have their 50 close friends that are all begging them to put it out. I think you have to have a real life demand for it. I think sometimes you need to ego check yourself and look back and see what kind of influence you have. It wasn't until I worked for other people and earned some trust that I was able to use that trust and turn it into influence. And I think that everyone can be a small business owner. Absolutely, wholeheartedly. Anyone can do it. But a small business can also be very successful with a small number of clients. My goal is not to scale. I don't believe that marketing people can truly be scaled, right? Every person is different, every artist is different, every song is different, every fan is different. It has to be customized in some sense. Yes, there are data and there's tools and there's numbers and there's charts, but at the end of the day, as a person, you can only know so many people. Just because you have 3,000 Instagram followers does not mean that you know 3,000 people.
Oh, so true.
So, if you think about the power of a small community, we're never going to have more than 20 artists on our roster, and we're all going to make enough money, and we're all going to grow with those artists. We're going to be more invested in them in the long run. It might take longer, but it's going to be more sustainable that way. And I think that is the most important thing, is just not to pressure and rush yourself. Don't compare yourself. Just because your friend's company blew up and they had some big investor and they're in the news doesn't mean that what you're doing is not good enough. Getting an investor and starting a big company is a giant risk with not a lot of confidence behind it. I've never accepted investment. I have reinvested every dollar that I've made, and that is a surefire way to build something that's going to last. I don't owe anybody anything at the end of the day, and there's confidence in that.
Amanda, I want to thank you so much for being here with us today. Like I said, we could talk all day, but I know you are a very busy woman. So I just want to just show our gratitude to you for just taking time out of your schedule to chat with us here on the Class C podcast.
Absolutely, Mary. Thank you for having me. And I'll be back anytime.
All right. I love it. And I might just have you back to talk about some marketing techniques.
You got it.
All right. Thank you so much. So everyone, that was Amanda Quinton with Quinton Digital sharing her advice for you, our Class C listeners. Remember, this podcast is brought to you through the partnership between Furman Innovation and Entrepreneurship and the Communication Studies Department at Furman University. I'm your host, Mary Sturgill. To hear other conversations with innovators, subscribe to the Class C podcast and share us with your friends and family. Until next time, dream big, everybody.